Welcome into the SMU TV studios here in Dallas. I'm Grace Lawrence.
I'm Peter Warner.
And I'm Grace Thompson.
We are here to preview the SMU vs. Cincinnati game this Saturday at 11 a.m. in Ford Stadium, also on ESPN. Now, SMU's coming off that Navy win. We finally got a win in over a month.
Needed it.
It was 40-20 until late in the fourth when the defense gave up 2 touchdowns like in that fourth quarter, like I said, making the final score 40-34. Peter, what are your thoughts about that game?
I think it was a great win, 40-20. Our defense looked pretty good. At the end of the game, that's kind of garbage time minutes. You know, you're up by 20, so I'm not really super worried about that little late collapse. I honestly feel a little bit more confident about our defense now, especially playing against a run team. We were actually able to stop the run for once, which felt pretty good as a fan. So I think it was a really good game, and offensively, we looked really good. That Tanner Mordecai 60-yard touchdown, it's nice to see him use his legs really well. So.
No, let's talk about that. Let's talk about Tanner Mordecai. People had their doubts. I'd like to say I never did. I was Team Tanner.
Yeah, you were always.
I was a little Preston. I was Preston.
I was Team Preston for a second.
Yeah, I was.
You stayed true. You stayed tried and true.
I stuck with Tanner, and God, he had a great game. He should have had 2 touchdowns, but you know he had some incredible rushing yards. That 60-yard touchdown was literally incredible. Like he just ran past that defense. He is very fast for a quarterback. Grace, what are your thoughts on the offense from that Navy game?
I mean, I think they played strong. I think that we got some unfamiliar faces up in the game, which was really fun to see. But I think ultimately we know our offense is strong. You know, we know that that's not our challenge. I think that just being able to wrap it up and finish in that defensive last quarter is what we need to kind of focus on from here on out.
Yeah, what did you think about the offense?
We looked good. It was nice to see more wide receiver depth shown. It wasn't just Rashi, which is good, especially since we've had all those injuries that we've been worrying about with the wide receiver core, and they still performed. So that felt really good because Tanner had, like 336 passing yards, which is really good for a depleted wide receiver core and an injured Rashi. So that was really nice to see.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Let's talk about Rashi a little bit. Now, he has a toe injury. He also has a Canes sponsorship. I don't know if you guys saw. Today, he became, or Thursday, I mean, he became the NIL ambassador for Canes. So that was pretty cool.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, pretty big deal for him. But he also has a toe injury. He's been rehabbing since pretty much the TCU game. He's been playing on it. Like you said, looked a little bit slow. You know, Tanner's outrunning you, which is very interesting with that game. But it probably is due to that toe injury, rehabbing it, not having to go 100%, knowing Cincinnati's the next week. Also, Bo Corrales probably out for the season along with Jake Bailey. So, like you said, depletion when it comes to injuries on the offense. Who do you think will step up? Will it be Rasheed going into Cincinnati playing on that toe injury? Who needs to step up with all these injuries?
I mean, I don't know if Rasheed can step up much more. I think he's, you know, obviously controlled so much of our offense going into this, like, kind of mid-season play. But, I mean, I just want to circle back to those injuries. Bo Corrales cannot catch a break. You know, Dallas Morning News wrote that article a few weeks ago about how he's gotten so unlucky. He has years of eligibility saved up. I just think he keeps having these really unfortunate instances, which I was really looking forward to seeing him be explosive on the offense. So I was sad to see that Coach Lashley anticipates him to be out for the season.
Right.
But offensively, I think that the running backs need to step up. I don't know if that will be Trey Siggers. I think obviously he plays well and is fairly consistent, but I think the 2 things hindering us this season are our defense and our run game, and our defense on the run game. So I think that that's really something that needs to be focused on.
Right, and when Trey Siggers came out of the locker room, I was on the field, and he came out in sweats onto the field. I texted boboth of you, and I'm like, Trey's not playing.
Nope.
Again, it's against Navy, who, shockingly, they're one of probably their easiest conference games of the year. But yeah, Trey comes out in sweats. I'm like, okay, so we need other running backs to step up. TJ McDaniel looked like he did with that touchdown. What are you looking for from the running back room? Maybe Trey's healthy enough to play, maybe he's not. What are you thinking?
I like Gardner. He's been really impressive so far this season. He's our top rusher on the team. It's only 1 yard more than Siggers, but Siggers was hurt, you know, so take that into account. But Gardner's been very impressive this year. I want to see more out of Kamara. I know we say that every week. I'm so high on his potential that I want to see more from him, but we haven't been able to see that yet. But I think honestly just feeding Gardner the ball, he has the capability to just get those hard runs down the gut for the SMU offense. So I really like that from him.
I say this every week, but Kamara Wheaton is so young that there's just so much potential there, and obviously we'd love to see that potential used now, but I think it's kind of smart what the team is doing, kind of like tailoring him in practice and stuff to really play the game, because he's not accustomed to that like SMU strategy and pace of play. Obviously, he's a freshman, so I think it's strategic. But on the other side of the ball, or not the other side of the ball, but the running backs this season are only averaging 2.5 yards per carry, which is just
It's not a
like
I know
that's
we
not a
haven't-
run game. You know
we
what I
haven't
mean?
super touched on this yet, but like Ulysses Bentley, what he did for the running backs was incredible during his years here. You know, he did so much his freshman season, not as much as sophomore season, but still contributed so much. When he went out with that injury, when he was in a boot for a bit of the season last year, you saw it take a wear on the offense. And maybe that's also what we can chalk it up to a little bit. He was a leader. He was a friend to everybody on the team. It seemed he was very into the camaraderie, and they miss him. They really do.
Yeah, I think that transfer is something that has affected the running back room specifically, obviously. And I'm hoping that someone kind of steps in and fills those shoes.
It's the
I was
time.
about to say, someone needs to get in a leadership role
It's
there,
time,
because
yeah.
it seems there's discombobulation
I think
in
there's,
that room.
and this is an assumption from an outside
Yes,
point of view,
obviously.
but I think that there's some sort of, obviously there's a healthy level of competition amongst the players who want starting spots and playing time, but I think that in a way it seems like they don't collaborate with one another in like a practice and like playing mentality. So I don't know, I think that if they kind of work together as a team a little bit better, that's where that run game will improve. And obviously Tanner has an explosive connection with Rushy, but I think it also is a little bit on him for kind of how he manages the offense.
Definitely.
I was just saying, the running back room, there's a certain amount of competition that's good, but too much becomes almost a toxic relationship between the backs,
completely.
and I hope we're not heading down that path.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously we don't know what goes on in the locker
We don't.
room,
Yeah.
but it's just
We're just
something
surmising.
to think.
Also, getting into, like you're saying, this team culture, Rhett Lashley talked to me a lot about team culture in that interview. Second week into the season, he said on top of wanting to win a conference championship, building a culture that's going to last for years is part of his message, part of what any coach kind of wants from their team. What have you, Peter, been thinking about Rhett Lashley's decision-making in this win compared to the 3 losses that preluded it, and how about his overall stance with the team?
Honestly, I feel like it was almost a safer game we played. We weren't taking as many risks. There weren't as many crazy deep balls and like 4th downs. We weren't going for it as much, but I kind of like that, especially in kind of a vanilla game, as you would say, before Cincinnati. It was a good game for his play calling. I thought it was a little bit better. I was ready to go up in arms and tell him to stop doing the play calling. But he did a lot better that game. I just want him to find a way to utilize that run game, as we talked about more.
Yeah.
But
And then one more point, if SMU had a competitive defense, they would run through this conference. We talked about defense a little bit earlier. They're small. They finally stopped some of the run game. I'm a little worried. Cincinnati's pretty big compared to Navy. But if the defense was competitive, man, I think they'd run through this conference.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think that one thing that's important about the defense is, and the defensive coordinator has talked about it, they can't finish the game. Like, as we saw against Maryland, leading the first 3 quarters, that last 4th quarter is where it all kind of crumbled below them. And I think that even the fact that the defensive coordinator and the team is talking about how they are struggling to finish, like that's what the missing ingredient is. I think that obviously speaks to what they're doing. But I think the way that they played against like a triple option Navy team, like Navy plays differently, point blank. And I think that they held their own in a pretty strong way.
yeah, inconsistency, as I said last show, has been the key all year.
It's one half, like you said.
Yeah, one half TCU, first half garbage.
Yeah.
Lost the game. Second half versus Maryland wasn't too great. Lost the game. So we just need to find a way to just stay. If they can just keep their mind strong for just those 3 hours, they win a football game, and then they get to have fun afterwards.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Just get in that game and stay there.
And I don't know if it's a question of like motivation, exhaustion. Like obviously, I'm sure a lot of it kind of melts together, but it definitely makes you wonder, like, if they're up by 1 possession, you know, is that where their minds kind of shut off?
Yeah.
And that's something, and I think motivation is a big thing for this team, and kind of how they rally together and really get their jobs done.
Yeah.
Another thing that we could potentially think about here is the weather. That
was gonna
TCU
say,
game,
yeah.
90-degree weather,
Yeah.
going against that run defense, that wears you down. And they were on the field a lot. And especially, I think another thing is because our offense is just so run and gun, hurry up offense. They're on the field a lot longer than they should expect. So maybe now that weather
cooling
could
off,
cooling
hopefully.
off, not sitting at that 90-degree Texas sun.
Yeah.
That could maybe help too.
Unfortunately,
Something
I
to
think
think about.
88's the high on
Tomorrow.
Saturday.
It's in the morning though.
That's true.
So it won't. I looked at
Only
it. It's
by
only
the
gonna be
tail end.
Yeah,
low
but
80s.
it's the same
low
time
80s.
as the TCU game was.
But it's like 3 weeks later. It's,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
low 80s
We'll
in the
see-
morning.
we'll
I looked at
see.
it. Hopefully.
Well, actually, the TCU game, I mean, they're in Fort Worth when they played OK State this weekend. Molly McGrath's on the sideline, and part of one of her stand-ups in front of the camera was she was measuring the temperature on either sides of the stadium. So I wonder if even shade helps certain teams, because our side is more shaded. And she was saying how it was 90 degrees on the OK State side before the second half, and it was a cool 70 degrees on the TCU side. So hopefully that can help
Wow.
us too, because you know how our side's a little bit more shaded.
protected by the bowl.
Yes, yeah. Let's get into the game on Saturday. Peter,
Yes.
can you take me through some stats going into the game?
Yeah, so statistically, ESPN FPI has the Mustangs at about a 33% chance to win. It's a little bit higher maybe just because it's at home. The big thing I'm looking at is just the passing, the difference between their rushing yards compared to ours and our passing yards compared to theirs. So Tanner Mordecai has almost 450 more passing yards this year than their quarterback,
Yeah.
Bryant, but he has the same amount of touchdowns and interceptions,
Okay.
which is kind of interesting. And then rushing yards, their top rusher has 502 yards for the year, McClelland, and our running back room, Gardner, leads with only 230. So
Okay.
that's kind of a big disparity
Yeah.
to look at right there.
Yeah, let's talk about Cincinnati now. I mean, those numbers are a lot different than they were last year. Now, Cincinnati, they do not have Desmond Ridder, and on defense, they don't have Ahmad and Kobe anymore. I mean, Sauce is killing it in the
He's been
NFL.
good. I was
Wearing
watching
that
him the other
cheese
day.
hat
He
on
was good.
Sunday.
That was
yeah.
funny. That was
yeah.
funny.
No, they were no doubt an incredible team last year. Only Alabama could stop them in the Cotton Bowl, made it to the playoff. Luke Fickell was even in the conversation for that Notre Dame job, but obviously didn't take it. I also think a little bit of it stemmed from it felt wrong because that team was so special last year. Why would you want to leave it?
Yeah.
Good for the conference with what they did because they still were in the American when they made that.
Yeah.
When they made the Cotton Bowl, they're going to leave obviously in July. But good for the conference that they made the Cotton Bowl. This team looks a lot different, Grace. So I'm curious, what do you think we'll get out of Cincinnati with a completely different look on offense and defense from them this year?
I think obviously it's important to note they're coming off a bye week, so that will either help or hurt. Only time will tell. But I think also they are so injury laden. At least they were against USF last week. And Ben Bryant, they still don't know if he's playing or not. He's undergoing concussion protocol. So I think that is going to be a decisive thing, like if he's playing or not. Because if they throw in their QB2, like I don't personally know anything about their backup quarterback. So I think that at the end of the day, we have the capability to stop any team that we put our minds to. In my opinion, at least who we have on the rest of our schedule,
Yeah.
I think that we do have the capability to win these games. It's just whether the execution is there.
Right.
So I don't even see the need to kind of break down the differences in the offense because I think we've also done it a little bit prior in the show, but I just think that if they put their minds to it and really, really do put their best foot forward, which I'm hoping that they do, I think they can take down the Cincinnati team. I think they got kind of close last year.
It really
So I don't know. I think the capability's there, but I think that they have an injured wide receiver on Cincinnati and an injured running back, two of their really big players, and potentially an injured quarterback. So how that plays out will really change the game.
Right. No, the game was close against Cincinnati last year, at least in the first half. Then it was a little bit of a controversy because Fickell kept everybody in to the end to kind of run up the score. I mean, it was blatant. You can't really argue that.
No.
And he wanted to prove to the playoff committee they were a playoff team. It just so happened he did it against SMU. So do you think we're saying a lot of our team is still here from last year. Do you think that's in the back of their mind? They want to avenge that loss?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, that was our one shot, get a lot of national recognition last year.
Yeah.
And he bullied us.
Yep.
To be honest, he just bullied us. But I mean, again, from a Cincinnati perspective, we were their best team on their schedule. So in a way, take it as a compliment, right?
Yeah.
But no, those players are going to be angry, especially on the defensive end of the ball.
Yeah.
Final score, I think, was 48-17, I think, last year.
I saw a quote from one of the Cincinnati players this week who was saying they haven't spent practice time reviewing game footage from last year, which I thought was interesting because it is so many of the same returning players. And the logic that the player quoted, and I can't remember who it was, but they were saying that, oh, it's a new head coach, they're playing differently, but we're really not playing that
No.
differently.
It's the same
Rhett
offensive
is-
scheme.
Yeah,
has-
Rhett's
has
plan that he put in
Sonny's,
place
yeah.
3 years ago and under Sonny is still, a lot of it can be seen now. So I was really shocked to hear them say that they really had not been paying attention to last year's film from any of SMU's games because they're relying so heavily on this new head coach. But it's not all that new.
I'm also going to make the point that UCF, Houston, and Cincy, like I said, they're leaving for the Big 12 in July, and they act superior because they're doing it, and I think it's a good way for teams to take advantage of it because there's that mindset like we're better than you, we're going to a Power 5 better conference, but I mean they only lost to Arkansas week 1, but let's look at that USF game. Like you said, injury laden on both sides of the ball, both teams, only beating them 28-24. So what are you thinking?
I mean, it gives me hope.
Right.
It gives you a lot of hope, and it was an away game too. It was at UCF, so maybe they struggle on the road. And also that Arkansas team isn't actually very good. They've been pretty abysmal since they lost that Texas A&M game. I mean, it's an SEC football team, give them credit, but they haven't been living up to those expectations because they were a top 10 team to start the year.
Yeah.
So
Also fresh. First week's pretty fresh.
That's
Like they're
true.
all ready to go.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But
hopefully Cincinnati's kind of come down since
exactly.
then.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's just my thought is, especially with that Arkansas game, maybe Arkansas, and it was at Arkansas too.
Yeah.
So maybe Arkansas isn't as good as
Yeah.
we think they are, and Cincinnati isn't
Right.
as good as we thought they were based off that game.
I mean, good, bad, we will only see how we play
Yeah.
out on Saturday, but it's just a different team
Yep.
than
Yeah.
it was last year in a big, big way.
It
you
is.
know?
And like you said, the conference is even. Tulane is atop of the conference. Who would have thought
I
that
wouldn't
the
have told you
Tulane
that.
Green Wave are ranked 25 and they have not lost a game in conference yet. Neither has Cincy. Cincy's 21. We should also mention that in the country. But you know, we were ranked. We won a ton of games in the beginning of the season, the past 3 seasons, and this year we didn't. We're not ranked, but I think that's an opportunity to go out and show this conference is even.
Bringing
It's-
up rankings, if they're 21, TCU is now at 10. We held on to TCU for
Yes.
by
That's
the
true.
so if you're
That team killed
if you're
OU.
being relevant
Yeah.
or like comparing the rankings, I think that's of note
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
were even in the running
very
in
good
that
point.
in that top 10 game.
Yes.
I think that's something that we can see
And
play out.
Maryland is giving a ton of these Big Ten teams
They're
a
giving
game.
Yeah.
They gave Michigan
They
a
gave
game.
Michigan a game.
They're
I think
playing Penn State
people
this weekend, giving them a
underestimate
game.
SMU. We have every capability to give people a
putting it
run
all
for their
together.
money.
Our
It's just
team
putting.
is so
It's just
good.
being aggressive and being
Our
motivated.
team is so good. We just have to finish a game.
They just have
and
to
play a full
dial
game.
dial
Play
in a little
full
bit more.
football.
And I know it's easy for us to say that
Okay.
up here, but
Also, real fast before we close, I was thinking about this. We're at the halfway point of the season.
We
What
are.
would you give Rhett as a grade halfway through the season?
out of 1 to 10 or 1 to
just like
100,
A, B, C?
ABC. Okay.
I was thinking about that the other day.
Want to start out with you?
Yeah,
Since you've had thoughts.
I have thoughts. I would give him like a B minus.
I was gonna say the
That's
same.
what I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
I was gonna say B or B minus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. He's won the games that he should,
Yeah.
but he's been
Just
close
some
enough in the big
plays.
games.
I think
but
Casey Woods might even get a lower grade than that on the offense because I just don't love a ton of the plays that are being called. I also think, I mean, a lot of it falls on the guys not being able to execute it on the field, but it's a team game, coaches and players. But yeah, I would agree about the B minus B mark because they've lost these games. Besides UCF, which got away from them, it's been close. And I mean, it's his first year. We have to remember that.
Yeah.
He hasn't head coached a team yet. And so he's got not only the offense to think about, but the defense. And, that's a lot of where the defense and a little bit of the offensive play calling is kind of where I would rank him lower at that
think-
B minus range.
Unfortunately, it is a learning year. It is a growth year for the team and for Coach Lashley. So I think that's obviously super notable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think his main setbacks are play calling and kind of motivating through that fourth quarter and tying the game up, with like
Yeah.
a nice little bow.
Yeah.
Doesn't even always have to be nice, but
Yeah,
just
you just have to
if you're
win.
gonna start it out strong, would love if they could
Yeah.
finish it strong.
football games.
And to end the show, we had on Twitter, SMU Athletics, they tweeted out that they're addressing the concession issues that have been very big the past couple home games. So to address concession issues, this is a quote from them. Our partner Aramark will be dramatically increasing staffing moving forward based on each game's attendance. For this weekend's game, it's homecoming. A lot of people are coming in for it. They will more than double the staff they had at the last game. They will also station a manager in each stand who can handle any issues that arise. They will be increasing stock as well to avoid running out of items during the game. We trust that this will improve service and wait times to our fans. Peter, what do you think?
We'll have to see. They said they're going to make changes after the
TCU
game, and then they're like, oh, they put one water cooler, but they didn't have water cups, like to get from the cooler. So I was like,
Yeah.
how are we supposed to, like, drinking fountain? Like,
Yeah.
what is this supposed
I
to
saw
do?
a few people mouths
Were
under
they
the
doing it?
spigot. Yeah.
So-
That's real sanitary after
exactly,
the coronavirus.
right?
Well,
Right,
it
exactly.
didn't look like they were touching, but I
Okay,
definitely
good.
did see
that's,
it.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I know there's lines for just like to get a simple water. Even
Yeah.
last week versus Navy, it was taking you 20 minutes. You missed five.
And
at
we
least
were
five-
lucky it was a night game.
Yeah, and you miss at least 5 minutes of game time there,
Yeah.
at least.
And the TVs, when I was at TC, the TVs weren't working in the hallways, so I didn't know what
Yeah.
people were cheering
Yeah, I
for.
noticed that actually as well. I think also it's like, if this fixes it,
Yeah.
then that's great. But if it doesn't, then I think SMU needs to take a little bit more of the
Yeah.
blame and not so much on their
It's-
partner.
I agree.
Because if this doesn't fix it, they either have to completely reevaluate that
Right.
concession partnership, or they have to reevaluate their side of it.
Yeah, I went to the Coliseum to watch USC play a couple weeks ago and didn't wait more than 5 or 10 minutes in line for
No.
something. It was pretty nice.
Yeah.
No, I
That's
mean-
a 75,000
That-
capacity stadium.
I
so
agree. If we want to make it to
40,000 more
Oh,
people.
yeah, that is.
Yeah.
If we want to make it to a big conference, we have to figure something like this out, and that's critical.
Yeah.
It's like the easiest thing we
It's-
can
it's
figure
just
out hypothetically.
literally-
Like winning the game is one thing, but the consent, if we can get that figured out, then
You got to put a couple extra stands where they can
Yeah.
still have ready to
Yeah.
go, like even just like
And
the hot
obvious-
dogs ready to go, something
Yeah.
like that. Just make it faster.
the end zone complex that they're adding after this season,
That'll
I'm sure
help.
will help not only expand capacity, but also help with concessions wise on that new
Yeah,
level
get some more
concourse.
stuff out on that lawn.
Yeah.
Waters, everything.
Yeah, they could put a couple stands out there.
Exactly. All right,
lot to
guys,
deal
thank you
with.
so much for tuning in for SMU TV. I'm Grace Lawrence.
I'm Peter Warner.
And I'm Grace Thompson.
Tune in to the game on Saturday on ESPN at 11 a.m. If you can't make it to Ford Stadium, SMU will be taking on Cincinnati. As always, pony up.
Beat Cincy.